Well, the scene is now set for a dramatic showdown over President Trump's pick for the U.S. Supreme Court. In just a few hours, senators will hear from the first woman to accuse Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault 36 years ago. Christine Blasey Ford is one of 3 women to go public. The latest, Julie Swetnick, says back in high school, Kavanaugh was drunk and sexually aggressive at parties where women were drugged and gang raped. Kavanaugh denies all of the claims, including 2 other anonymous allegations from 1985 and 1998, and calls it a coordinated smear campaign. In a bizarre news conference, though, the U.S. president tried to defend Kavanaugh, insisting the nominee was telling the truth, and almost as an afterthought added he might change his mind after Thursday's Senate hearing.
And this is beyond Supreme Court?
Right.
There's nothing beyond Supreme Court. This is beyond Supreme Court. This has everything to do with our country. When you are guilty until proven innocent, it's just not supposed to be that way. Always I heard, you're innocent until proven guilty. I've heard this for so long, and it's such a beautiful phrase. In this case, you're guilty until proven innocent. I think that is a very, very dangerous standard for our country.
Joining me now here in Los Angeles, CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist Dave Jacobson, Republican strategist and media consultant Luis Alvarado, and former Deputy U.S. Attorney and Criminal Defense Attorney David Katz. Thank you guys for being with us. I just want to start just in general about what your takeaway was about the president's demeanor, his tone. He seemed to jump from topic to topic. He didn't finish his sentences. They often didn't make sense. He kind of seemed on edge. He didn't really focus a lot. So Dave, first to you, what was your takeaway?
It was baffling. It was Trump being Trump. I mean, it was more of a rant and a ramble, and you know, there wasn't a coherent message or strategy behind it. I think, look, if you look through the president's lens, there's been report after report that he's frustrated with Kavanaugh's defense. He didn't really think that Kavanaugh was very compelling in yesterday's Fox interview, so he wanted to take matters into his own hands, perhaps, to potentially create, I guess, from Trump's perspective, some political momentum for Kavanaugh to go into tomorrow's hearing. And I think it somewhat backfired. And I think the biggest issue was because Donald Trump used his own past experiences with women, threatening him, with women making accusations about, sexual harassment, among other issues. And I think the challenge is Donald Trump looks like a hypocrite, right? Because there are documents that Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's former attorney for over 10 years, put forward in court, underscoring the fact that the president actually paid, obviously Stormy Daniels, among others, to silence them for his alleged affairs. And so the hypocrisy here is extraordinary.
Yeah, that's something we hear a lot when it comes to this administration. But Luis, you're a media consultant. What would be your advice to Donald Trump? Not that he would take it, not that he would listen to it, but what would your advice be to the president after that news conference?
Well, there's no question the style and the structure of the press conference was something that left many baffled. And certainly many professors for years to come will probably use that as an example of what not to do or how to prepare not to have a disaster. That being said, the question still always is, who's your audience? And when it comes to Donald Trump, he has a select audience, we call it the base. And to the base, everything he said actually hits as a home run.
Everything, even that?
Everything he said hits a home run. Okay. The only question is the independents. But we're talking about the electorate. At the end of the day, what's being discussed is a proceeding in the Senate for a confirmation, which doesn't have the rigor to require evidence as you would need in a courtroom. So that being said, the only one who probably has to be worried is Mitch McConnell, because he's the one who's whipping votes for the selection process. And I don't think that what the president did sufficiently to damage that process. Right. You can argue, about the political process. Right. You could argue about disenfranchising with women. You can argue the international community being concerned. You can argue all those points and probably have be effective in that. But when it comes to the process of selecting the next justice of the Supreme Court, I don't think it was much of a damage.
David, we have to stress that in the coming hours, it's a hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee. It is not a courtroom. There are different standards. There are different rules which apply. But what are the implications when the President of the United States uses his position in the bully pulpit to go after the women accusing Brett Kavanaugh, and he says that it's basically a big, fat con job.
Well, I think it's ineffective. I don't think it's going to work with the audience that they need. The audience they need is the suburban women, people like Senator Collins, Murkowski, the other swing senators. There's 2 or 3 more that they must have in order to confirm Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. And I think it was very ineffective at trying to reach those potential voters and those moderate senators. But having said that, it's very important that people remember that you do have a right to be found, not guilty unless it's proven beyond a reasonable doubt. But this is not a criminal proceeding. Yeah. It's not even a civil proceeding with a preponderance standard.
It's a job interview.
He has no right to get this post on the U.S. Supreme Court for the next 30 years. And the president has every right to pull him back and to put in somebody who would be a more suitable, more confirmable candidate. And I think right now with this drip, 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 I really think it's about done.
Okay, here's a little more from the president when he was asked what message is he sending to young men around the country when he is questioning the honesty and the motive of the women who allege sexually inappropriate behavior by Brett Kavanaugh.
It's a very dangerous period in our country, and it's being perpetrated by some very evil people. This is just a game that they're playing. It's a con game.
So, Dave, exactly what is that message that the president was trying to put out there? Well, explain that answer if you can.
I mean, he's basically telling men that this kind of behavior is okay. Let's not forget, John, this is the president who backed Roy Moore, the Senate candidate from Alabama.
And then Rob Porter, who was accused of domestic abuse. There was also, the Wynn Casino guy who was also sexual harassment.
Yeah, so like Donald Trump has long sided with the man and not the women who are accusing men of these egregious activities. But, I go back to hypocrisy note. I mean, the man is extraordinarily disingenuous. If you recall during the 2016 campaign, when Donald Trump strolled up to the last debate against Hillary Clinton with all of Bill Clinton's accusers, he believed the women then, but not now. And I think, look, optically, this is a big issue for Republicans. You've got 11 GOP senators during the Judiciary Committee who are going to be going up and asking questions of Dr. Ford and, of course, Judge Kavanaugh. You don't have any women on the Republican side. That's a big issue.
Which is why they brought this attorney in from Arizona to ask the questions.
Yeah, but then it's going to be so awkward, right? Because you're going to have all these senators just sitting there letting someone else do the questioning. Their facial expressions obviously are going to have an impact of this. Are they going to actually engage in the dialogue? That's a big issue. But what's also telling, John, is that there's a poll that came out today with Politico and Morning Consult that showed Republican women crippling and falling apart from the Trump coalition and base. You've got 49% of Republican women who actually support Kavanaugh, 15% oppose. This is Donald Trump, who has long had a history of having 88, 90% of Republican support, throughout the course of his administration. So you're seeing this ripple effect with Republican women, and I think that is telling as we go into the November election.
Okay, well, as we've been reporting, another woman came forward on Wednesday accusing Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault. In her affidavit, she says, during the years 1981 to 82, I became aware of efforts by Mark Judge, Brett Kavanaugh, and others to spike the punch at house parties I attended with drugs and/or grain alcohol so as to cause girls to lose their inhibitions and their ability to say no. She goes on to raise allegations of gang rape carried out by Kavanaugh and others, who again has denied that. But here's the president when he was asked about Julie Swetnick's accusations. Here he is.
I don't know about today's person that came forward. I do know about the lawyer, and you don't get much worse bad reputation to take a look at his past. So as far as the other women are concerned, I'm going to see what happens tomorrow. I'm going to be watching, believe it or not. I'm going to see what's said. So it's possible that they will be convincing.
And Louis, it's possible they could be. Well, there's only one testifying on Thursday anyway. It's Christine Blasey Ford. But, when it comes to hiring dodgy lawyers, Donald Trump knows a thing or two about that.
Yeah, he hired one himself. And listen, at the end of the day, I would not want Donald Trump defending me if I'm being accused of anything. The president of the United States is not very eloquent. He's not very prepared when it comes to forming an argument. He certainly is very emotional when he delivers his arguments, and that stumbles his messaging. And it's very unfortunate because at some of the things that he said, he does have a point with, what we were discussing about, having somebody's word being sufficient to derail somebody's career of 36 years who's never had an issue up until the moment it became a political fight. Right. And that's that's a fact. And those facts cannot be turned away. It's a political fight. It's the Democrats versus the Republican. It's about who's going to win the election in November, who's going to take control of the Hill on November 6th. And that's the ultimate battle that we're witnessing today. The man has a stellar career. He's had his liberal professors from Yale testifying on his behalf and his character. And we're not talking about a monster here. We're not talking about somebody who had
with all due respect, I mean, we just don't know what is in this guy's background because, you know, the FBI misses stuff and there's no new FBI investigation. I mean, I don't think, you know, I don't think he's I don't know. I mean, we don't know if Ford is telling the truth. We don't know, you know, if Kavanaugh's telling the truth. But because they won't even call Mark Judge as a witness, I guess we'll never find out.
I guess we will not.
Okay, and which is how they want it. But,
yes.
You know, there's also been some questions about Swetnick and Avenatti over the lack of detail in that affidavit. Here's Avenatti basically explaining, you know, the credibility of the affidavit, if you like, a little earlier on CNN.
This is a detailed statement. It is a sworn statement under penalty of perjury. And these facts, if alleged in a criminal context, to start a criminal investigation would be more than sufficient for the process to begin. And again, we're at the beginning stages. We're not at the end stages.
David, you know, legal opinion, do you agree with Mr. Avenatti?
Well, you've raised some excellent points, and I think he has too, there, that this is a pretty compelling statement. And a declaration like this, under penalty of perjury, is an awfully strong basis to go forward. Now, as a criminal charge, this might have a problem with the criminal statute of limitations because we have them both in the federal courts, and almost all the states would bar this particular claim, but apparently not Maryland.
No statute of limitations on sexual assault.
But let me throw this in. It's pretty rich for them to say that this is a political thrust because Gorsuch went to Georgetown Prep. Nobody made these allegations about him and being drunken or doing anything like that. We just had Gorsuch come through in the last year. No such allegations were made against him. None were made against Alito. None were made against Chief Justice Roberts. This fellow seems to have a drinking problem. And the Federal Bureau of Investigation should have investigated it before. And if they didn't before, they should investigate it now. And I don't see how the Republicans can say there should not be an investigation. That's basic. You have the investigation first, and then you have the hearing later.
There were no allegations against Harvey Weinstein until the dam burst. There were no allegations, you know, against a whole long list of high-profile men who basically have been fired and in disgrace from high-profile positions. But in case anyone was curious as to why the U.S. president is so quick to defend men who are accused of sexually inappropriate behavior, from pedophilia to sexual harassment, even domestic abuse, here's why.
I've had a lot of false charges made against me, really false charges. I know friends that have had false charges. People want fame, they want money, they want whatever. So when I see it, I view it differently. It's happened to me many times.
So, Dave, the way the president sees it is that all those women are liars.
It's horrifying. It's really horrifying because the president of the United States is supposed to be a role model to children, to, you know, working families across this country. And here you have somebody who, you know, time and again sides with the male over the accuser, and particularly at a time, as you so eloquently pointed out, in the post-Harvey Weinstein era, when, you know, the question is being raised, like, do you believe the woman? The answer is yes.
And then you investigate and find out what happened. You take it seriously. You listen to the allegations. You know, keep in mind, this is a president who has consistently had a problem, as you said, with women voters, and it's getting worse, his support among, you know, women, even though he said that basically he won them overwhelmingly in 2016. He didn't. You know, here's a sort of a clip, a little mashup of how he treated women reporters during that news conference.
One more question, yes.
Just to follow up
she says, I'd like to ask about 3 questions. It's not really fair to everyone else, but should I let her ask another question?
If I could just actually ask my question, Mr. Trump. You didn't let me ask my question.
Well, you've been asking a question for 10 minutes, so please sit down.
Are you at all concerned at the message that has been being sent to the women who are watching this when you use language like con job in relation to allegations
I've used
of
much
sexual
worse
assault?
language in my life than con job. The people that have complained to me about it the most, about what's happening, are women. Women are very angry. You know, I got 52% with women. Everyone said this couldn't happen, 52%. Women are so angry.
Yeah, Luis, in that last exchange with the Sky News reporter, you know, it was sort of like that, you know, when he had the Irish reporter in the Oval Office, and it was all a bit awkward and flirty and, you know, entirely inappropriate. But again, you know, this is a president who I imagine he's been told that this is not the sort of behavior. Don't talk over women. Don't, you know, show them the respect that you would show their male colleagues. No more, no less. But yet he doesn't.
If he was the president of a news network, I'm certain he would have lost his job by now with the kind of language and attitude he has and how he directs his comments with regards to the female associates that work inside that White House. And I'm talking about the reporters mainly. And it's very unfortunate that that's who we elected president, but that's who he is.
You're the Republican on the panel.
But that's the persona he is, you know, and many Republicans are not happy with how he behaves, how he communicates through Twitter, and he doesn't listen to anybody, and that's a concern from a risk management perspective of who's managing our country. But that being said, he is in the White House. The Constitution allows him protections and allows him powers. Yeah. And it's up to us to create an atmosphere that's going to send a message back to him that will create controls that will hopefully change the behavior that he has exhibited so far. I want to very quickly finish with the moment when the 45th president of the United States smeared the reputation of the first president of the United States.
Look, if we brought George Washington here and we said we have George Washington, the Democrats would vote against him, just so you understand. And he may have had a bad past, who knows, you know. He may have had some, I think, accusations made. Didn't he have a couple of things in his past?
David, you know, that's the art of the smear, right? I mean, this is just innuendo with, you know, George Washington?
Well, this whole minimization of these allegations. I mean, the main point is that these women have come forward with these allegations. In the Avenatti case, there's a declaration to say that, well, a person should be judged by their lawyer. After all, Donald Trump's lawyer for over a decade was Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to having committed a federal crime at the direction of President Trump. So you have all that. And turning to Dr. Ford, whose testimony is going to be tomorrow, and I think it's going to be just a compelling, epic showdown. And I think she's going to be believed. She's issued a statement. Her polygrapher has explained the polygraph. They've shown a photograph of that. She's had psychiatrist notes from 6 years ago where she explained to this psychiatrist something which is consistent with what she's saying now against Judge Kavanaugh. I think it's going to be a very compelling showing. And I think after that drip, 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 I don't think they're going to go ahead. I'm not a political expert like these fellows, but I don't think they're going to go ahead with that vote on Friday to confirm them. I think that's a bluff.
Very quickly, Dave, we're out of time, but how low do you have to go after George Washington? I'm not letting this go. I mean, this was just purely bizarre.
He's like beyond the gutter. I mean, that was just totally preposterous.
I cannot tell a lie. I did cut down the cherry tree, George Washington, right? It's just amazing.
Unbelievable.
Okay. Okay, guys, thank you so much. It was a great panel, great discussion.